All right, can we
All
have
right, can we
roll
have
call, please?
Commissioner Mercer.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Mercer, Commissioner Agner,
Agner.
Here.
Commissioner
Commissioner
McGann
McGann.
here, Commissioner
Commissioner
Engelke,
Here.
Here.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Little, absent,
absent.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Stokes,
Stokes.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Ware,
Ware.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Vidal.
Vidal.
She's
She's
absent.
absent.
All right, if everyone
All right, if everyone arrives, we will do our pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay,
Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look over the minutes from the last meeting. If y'all haven't, just take a look at those and once y'all can, do we have a motion?
All right, we have
a motion, Mr. Mercer, to accept. Do we have a second?
We have
We have a second
from
from Commissioner Egner.
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
Oh,
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ware.
I'm wrong about the roll call on that. Showing that Commissioner Stokes is here and he's absent.
Good question. He was at the meeting, well, I don't think it was the last meeting, but the meeting before he was here, I think virtually or whatever. And then but then we had technical difficulties. He faded out, basically, so we excluded him or whatever, but him voluntary.
These are the minutes from the meeting before and last month.
This should be from last month.
Okay, so if you look at
At the top,
that's
that's
Commissioner Egner.
Commissioner
If
Egner.
you look at
If you look at the
that's the
top,
one
that's the one that shows he was at
for that meeting.
that meeting.
All right, so we
All right,
have
so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Roll call,
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mercer.
Commissioner Mercer.
This is
Yes.
supposed to say yes. This is voting.
Yes.
Commissioner Egner,
Egner.
Commissioner
Commissioner McGann. Yes.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Ware,
Ware.
and Commissioner
And Commissioner
Stokes.
Stokes.
All right.
All right, so old business, we don't have any, so we'll move on to new business.
Starting with
Case number 2111, SPER, a request for a site plan and design review
for the
for the expansion of an existing retail land use
in
in the form of an addition
of a
of
garden
a garden
center
center
and feed
and
room at
6950
6950
Winchase
Drive by
Drive
Tractor
by
Supply.
Tractor Supply.
The
The
applicant is Sarah
Soroso,
architecture,
engineer or design,
subject parcel consists of 3.04 acres minus the parcel is currently zoned
C
planned
and commercial district. I will turn this over to
Director
Director Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to start off on sign this particular case, site plan and design type cases to our planner, which is Andrew Smith. He's got the API on this lister.
All right, so the area in which structures are going to be built, they're going to have the same use in that area. The products are still already stored there, and there's already a fence built there. Shown in their drawings, they're going to have a canopy and a fence there. The structure is just going to cover the incoming types of products that are going to be there. And it looks like it's just to protect them from the elements. The main addition are going to be where those
two arrows are. You have the brick building, and then basically one giant canopy being built alongside the building, and then a smaller partial canopy next to that larger one. This is an aerial view of the site. This is 3.04 acres along Windchase Drive. This is in a C4 zone. They're not going to add any more pavement. There's going to be no new impervious surfaces added. There's going to be no extra parking spaces added. There's going to be no trees removed. Nothing on the lot or the land is going to change outside of that specific fenced-in area. Inside that fenced-in area, under the canopy structure, they're going to have it's going to be part of their sales floor, and it'll still be somewhat outside, but it's still a sales floor where they're going to have a feed room and a garden center. So where the canopy is going to go, you can see those dots in the center right there. What they're going to do is dig up the concrete slab that's currently there and put in a spot where these poles can be put into the ground to hold up this canopy. That's going to be the footings for the greenhouse. And on that top part right there where that box is, there's a sort of tent structure there, and they're going to remove that and the bollards to make space for the new canopy structure. So when looking at the regulations to see whether or not they can do this and what kind of regulations to apply to whatever that structure is going to be categorized as, I looked at the definition of building, and so that definition is any structure having a roof supported by walls and intended for the shelter, housing, or enclosure of any individual, process, equipment, goods, or materials of any kind. And for the applicability of that, it says every building or structure hereafter constructed within the city of Horn Lake shall comply with the provisions of this article. Exempt from this provision shall be single-family dwellings and accessory buildings thereto. So there's actually no definition of accessory building. However, it's not going to matter in this case because that's only relevant if it's a part of a single-family dwelling. So interpretation can kind of go either way as far as this particular section is. However, if you look at in D1C for the applicability of regulations for accessory buildings or structures, there's a part in there that says, it's highlighted in red, any accessory building located closer than 10 feet to a principal building shall be considered as part of the principal building and shall be provided within the required side and rear yards applicable to the principal building. So basically, this has to count as a part of the building itself, even though it's basically going to be a canopy or a greenhouse structure. So that next slide there, that's just additional regulations as a continuation of that part. So on this slide here, I took a picture of what's currently there, and it's just showing, if you kind of look at the end of that arrow, you can see that dot there, and that's where the pole is going to be for the canopy structure, which is going to be right in front of that fence I took a picture of right there. So that's easily within 10 feet. It's looking like just a couple feet away from the wall. So the next section here, it's talking about the building design requirements. Basically, it's saying The building design shall exhibit architectural control which seeks to be creative and which best utilizes the building lines, shapes, and angles to maximize architectural integrity. It's saying unadorned, pre-stressed upright concrete panels, unfinished concrete block, galvanized or unfinished steel, galvanum or unfinished aluminum buildings, walls or roofs, and pole-type building materials are not permitted as a primary exterior building material. And also, at least 50% of the exterior wall finishes shall be comprised of any combination of at least 2 of the following materials: brick, natural stone, glass, stucco or stucco-like finishes, and other comparable superior material approved by the Planning Commission. And I highlighted there in red the part where this could potentially not be following. That picture I put up there, that's the only one that they submitted showing the, can you go back up to, yeah, that top picture right there. There's a faint line going above the building, and that's just an outline of where that greenhouse structure is going to be. They're not showing the poles or the roof or what the side of this greenhouse is going to look like. So there's really no way for us to tell whether or not it's really going to be the exposed poles on the side, or if there's going to be a wall or a tarp or any kind of material. Yes, I heard about that. Do you want to? Sure, you can jump ahead to there. So they just provided this to us today, and how many pictures did they send? Okay. So what the regulations say is that it can't just be exposed poles that count as part of the exterior. And so, do you know if, sorry, did you talk to them over the phone or did they just send an email?
Well, I think they sent them to Daniel.
Okay, because we don't have any information on the specific material of this protective layer or wall or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to read the requirements one more time. The unadorned, pre-stressed upright concrete panels, unfinished concrete block, galvanized or unfinished steel, galvanum or unfinished aluminum buildings, walls or roofs, and pole-type building materials are not permitted as primary exterior building materials. So it doesn't specifically not allow that. So I think that's the only statement I'll make on that. You can go to the, yeah. So for the next requirement that I looked at, we do have the requirement on letter D. It says a minimum of 20% of the facade facing the public right-of-way shall be glass. And currently, as the building is right now, it doesn't even follow that requirement. Right now, I calculated it at being only 10% glass on the facade. So adding this whole other structure is, of course, going to decrease that number further. And then on the next slide, I have a section on roof requirements. It says arcades, drive-under canopies, porches, and other features shall be created with a pitched roof. They are showing a pitched roof. It says materials for pitched roof shall be limited to architectural dimensional grade asphalt shingles, natural slate, natural terracotta, natural wood shake, copper, or factory finished sheet metal. They didn't specifically state the exact roof material they're going to build, and they didn't provide an aerial view of this. The only views we have are what's shown there, and so we don't have a way to see what the side view of the elevation of that roof is going to look like, and no description of the actual material. They did say that it's going to be the same color as the brick, and so it'll satisfy that requirement. So this here is just a reminder of the exceptions section we have in the ordinance. It says the Planning Commission may approve the materials and designs that differ from those required within this ordinance, provided the following criteria are achieved. A, the proposed building maintains the quality and value intended by this section. B, the proposed building is compatible and in harmony with other structures designed by standards in this section within the district. And C, the design exceeds the intent of the ordinance. So, and then for the possible motion, after reviewing case number 2111 SPDRA, request for a site plan design review for the expansion of an existing retail land use in the form of an addition, garden center, and a feed room at 6915 Winchase Drive, with the applicant being Tractor Supply Company and the engineer being Sorsha Architecture, with a parcel consisting of approximately 3.04 acres, and with zoning of C4, the Horn Lake Planning Commission either approves or denies of said request. If approving, please list any conditions to be met by the applicant.
Thank you very much. Okay. So does anybody have any questions for staff? I guess the one question I would have is, by the design, do y'all know how, because I know like Home Depot that's just down the street has a garden center. How does it differ from, how does what the proposed on the Tractor Supply differ from what Home Depot already has approved and built? Because I know their garden center has canopies and it's not, it doesn't follow the building structure. I don't know I can't remember what the front of the facade, but I know inside of it has canopies and such.
I'm not sure how much it's going to differ, and I'll also say that I'm not sure how that was approved or not approved, or if it was just done outside of the review from the city. All I know is just what this goes by. It's currently not addressed easily in our ordinance.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for staff?
Materials we got listed here, the brick, natural stone, glass, does it meet the 50% at this time? It doesn't?
It does not. Currently, again, I don't know how they got away from that. I don't know if the previous review years ago just overlooked that, or they got an exception of some kind. But right now, I calculated it at 10% glass.
And what they're really asking us to do is modify the materials for, if, like Chad said, if it's designed some similar to Home Depot.
It looks like they just want to add basically what looks like a greenhouse. This, right here, what they're showing, right now, if you go over there and look at the place, it's just open sky. There's no cover or anything like that. There's nothing covering it from the rain or the elements. And so all they're wanting to do is just put poles in the ground and put a cover above it.
Do we have the applicant here?
Yes, Tractor Supply and the architect are both here.
They're online.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So my name's Chris Goggin. I represent Tractor Supply. Chip Wallace, the architect, is also online.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Apparently y'all have been listening to this procedure,
Yes.
and can you address some of the questions that Mr. Andrew raised during his presentation?
Yes. So, for all intents and purposes, this is a mechanically fastened structure to the building, not freestanding. The poles he references are the columns, which also have the trusses and the polycarbonate roof, as well as the roll-up curtains that you see in the picture. That's the main difference between this and what you might find at, say, Lowe's or Home Depot, which do not have sidewalls. They're basically just, just a cover, a canopy. This is not. This will have on the side, we'll have roll-up curtains so that they can let these things get really hot in the summer. So we'll be able to roll the curtains up on a nice day, lower them on a day with inclement weather. It's not glass, it's polycarbonate panels. There's no sprinkler system for the plants. It's all direct applied, but there would be fire suppression, lights, fans to move air. But there's very little difference in the function than you might find at Lowe's or Home Depot.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Mr. Andrew, did that answer, seemed like you had a longer litany of questions than that.
That was really the main thing I wanted to know from them, was the side. And so it's going to be attached to the building on the one side, but then the other side is...
Were you able to catch that? I know it was hard to hear me earlier.
I'm sorry? Can you hear me?
Can you repeat your question?
Charles, did you hear their question?
No, I'm afraid I did not. What was it? Can you repeat it?
Yes, so the one side of the structure is going to be attached to the building, but...
I haven't heard anything either.
And the
other side is going to be the roll-up curtain.
Is that correct?
Is that correct?
I caught half of that.
So
is just the one side going to be the roll-up curtain,
and then
the other side attached
to the building?
So the back is a roll-up curtain. The front has a roll-up curtain, and the side opposite the building has a roll-up curtain on the back 2/3. It's a hard polycarbonate to the left, as you see right there in that upper picture, to the left of the roll-up door. If you're looking at it from the outside, to the right of the man door is a roll-up curtain.
Okay.
Okay, did that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, do we have a motion?
I have a motion. After reviewing case number 2111, a request for a site plan and design review for the expansion of an existing retail land use in the form of an addition of a garden center and feed room at 6915 Wind Chase Drive. with the applicant being Tractor Supply Company Incorporated, and the engineer being Sorosa Architecture, with the parcel consisting of approximately 3.04 acres plus or minus, and with zoning of C4. The Horn Lake Planning Commission approves of said request. If approving, please list any conditions to be met by the applicant, and I think we had the conditions.
So what conditions?
A through C under the exceptions,
I didn't see A through C.
which are read by Mr. Andrews earlier.
So I take that's basically you're saying that, based upon what the applicant has presented tonight, that they're meeting, exception K, and then that number 1, that A, B, and C, is that what you meant by that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, just want to make sure. All right, do we have a second? All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Stokes and a second by Commissioner Mercer. Do we have any other discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner Egner,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Ware,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, on to our case number 2113, SDPP, a request for approval of commercial subdivision preliminary plat named Walls Water Commercial Subdivision located at approximately 6098 Mississippi Highway Route 301 in Horn Lake by Walls Water Association landowner and Jones Davis Associates Engineer Company for land zoned as C4 planned commercial district consisting of 2 acres plus or minus and 1 lot. The address is unofficial and unassigned. I will turn this back over to our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for reading the description of the case. And, yeah, so what's before you is basically a preliminary plat. That's a subdivision preliminary plat request. I don't know if you remember this particular area of town from previous meetings. There was a rezoning associated with this area, which the Board of Aldermen did approve, changing the zoning from A-R, which is that ag residential type zoning, to the C4, which we currently have now. And so what they're basically wanting to do is parcel that out to match that description of that rezoning area. But in doing that, normally, like in this case, it's proposed as a 1-lot commercial subdivision. Normally that would fall within the definition of a minor subdivision, which the requirements to the subdivision regulations of the city are basically sketch plat and then final plat, which we could skip sketch plat if we felt that was appropriate. But in this case, this actually becomes a major subdivision because of the need to extend sanitary sewer, which is a public facility, which is located on the south side of Nail Road West. So that would have to be extended to the north to the site. And because of that public improvement, it changes the classification of the subdivision from a minor subdivision to a major subdivision. So what's before you is the preliminary plat, where that can be discussed and decided. So that's what a lot of that wording in some of your pages there in your packet, and on some of those, maybe go back there a little bit, just if you could, Daniel, yeah. So that's why some of that wording is in the packet to kind of substantiate that differential. So one of the key things in the preliminary plat application procedure is under that section 34-29, and it's that lowercase letter B there, and I highlighted it there, put it in bold font. And it says, if the Planning Commission, after the recommendation of the city engineer, finds that the preliminary plat satisfies the requirements of this article, it shall approve said plat. The subdivider or his agent, should be his or her probably, must be present at the Planning Commission meeting scheduled to hear the submitted application unless otherwise advised by the Director of the Planning Commission. I'm not sure who the Director of the Planning Commission is. I'm not sure. It's just a weird use of terms there. So I did talk to the Neil Schaefer Company, which the city does contract with them to provide city engineering services with. So I spoke with Greg Russell. He did the review on this when I sent it over to him, and he did the review on this a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to double check with him if they had any issues as far as what's being prescribed or what's being planned, and he did not. So I take that as basically as approval by the city engineer, so I wanted to communicate that to you tonight. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, hope. So one of the key factors in a preliminary plat that is found in the subdivision regulations is under this letter G, this lowercase letter G. And on the basis of approval of the preliminary plat, the subdivider may proceed with the preparation of construction plans, which in this case would be construction plans about the sanitary sewer extension, in the final plat itself, with reasonable assurance that no major changes will be required or made at a later stage of the approval process, provided the final plat is approved within 1 year from the date of the preliminary plat approval. So in this case, this wouldn't necessarily have to go to the Board of Aldermen. If the board found that what you saw in the review in the packet and in discussion with staff and the applicant, and you approve that, that would give them on a 1 year time frame to come back with the final plat and construction plans for those public improvements. Next slide, please. So I just put in there the procedure for recording a final plat. There's some important things there, whatever, so I won't read through them. If anybody has any questions, we can feel free to go back if you need to have more detail. Okay, we can go to the diagram there. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, if you remember from the rezoning case, it's 2 acres. It's under proposal, in this case for a plat, just 1 lot. No floodplain is at play. Nothing in the property is designated as 100-year floodplain or any other type of floodplain, so that's a positive thing. No new roads are proposed with the subdivision. The water supplier would be the Walls Water Association, and the sewer would be the city of Horn Lake. And so then I've made that statement there under number 6 there. A sewer main and its lift station will be required to develop the site. That is a public improvement. That's why it's a major subdivision, as I explained earlier, and the C4 zoning is now in place. So there's a lot of wording here. This goes into just kind of like the preliminary platting process, and this is just taken from the city's subdivision regulations. So in the end, we get to this possible motion. But in reviewing what's been proposed as far as the preliminary plat, if the board does approve, staff is suggesting the various conditions. So I will read the conditions so everybody knows about those. Lowercase letter A, number the plat and place the total number of lots on the name block on both sheets of the plat, and that's per DeSoto County actually. Letter B, add utility line locations, water and sewer on the plat, and develop a plan including drawings for installing necessary sanitary sewer to connect to the city of Horn Lake. Item C, add utility easements to the plat of the following widths: at least 10 feet for the frontages along Mississippi Route 301 and Nail Road West, 5 feet along the north side property line, and 10 feet along the eastern or rear property line. Item D, provide a drainage plans for review and approval by the city engineer. Item E, propose and depict location of a 5 feet wide sidewalks since the construction of the sidewalk is required via the subdivision regulations, section 3489, lowercase letter E. Item F, provide a will serve letter from Walls Water Association for the property. G, address the question of streetlights per the city engineer. That can also be done in conjunction with MDOT. I'm not sure if they would require them or not, but at least that needs to be investigated and explored. Item H, add wording to the plat. The development will adhere to city erosion and sediment control standards. And item I, per section 3430B, number 10 of the subdivision regulations, provide the subdivider's proposal to the mayor and board of aldermen for accomplishing the installment of the improvements in accordance with Article 4 of Chapter 34. So that would be staff's comments unless you have any questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions for staff?
This lift station and the sewer that's got to be run across there, would that be a shared expense by the developer, or is that up to the city?
That would be a question, you know, the applicant obviously could ask that of the alderman if they wanted to share in that or not, and that would have to be at the alderman's discretion. I don't know, so I don't know exactly what they would say. So
It seems like from that answer, the builder is providing all that money unless the aldermen decide to participate.
yes, and the thing in the normal scheme of things would be that it would fall upon the developer or owner of the property for those types of improvements. If they wanted to approach the city for any type of cost sharing formula, whatever, that they're free to do that. What the outcome of that would be, it would have to be determined.
Any other questions? Is the applicant here? All right, if y'all like to come up, y'all can add anything. You don't have to, but it's just if y'all want to add anything to the discussion. All right. Okay, does anybody have any questions for the applicants for them to have to come up? All right, do we have any other discussion? If not, do we have a motion?
The only question I have would be, are you okay with all of these exceptions, A through I? Okay.
All right, do we have a motion?
Make a motion we approve. Let me get to it here. Case number 2113, a request for approval of commercial subdivision preliminary plat named Walls Water Commercial Subdivision located approximately 6098 Mississippi Highway 301 in Horn Lake by Walls Water Association, landowner by Jones Davis and Associates Inc. Engineering Company for land zone C4 planned commercial district consisting of 2 acres plus or minus and 1 lot. Address is unofficial and unassigned, and no developers named as of 11/18/22.
Okay, are we adding the conditions A through?
Yes.
A through I, okay. So we have a motion to accept with conditions A through I. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner Egner,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Ware,
Yes.
and Commissioner Stokes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank y'all.
Just for the record keeping, who had the second on that? I didn't.
Commissioner Egner.
All right, thank you.
All right, case number 3114 VAR, a request for a rear yard setback variance for a proposed new building from the required 60 feet to 30 feet, thus a 30-foot variance. T4 Investments, LLC, AKA EEP Incorporated, landowner, Guckert Construction Management, LLC, applicant. Subject parcel is located at 6441 U.S. Highway 51 North and consists of 2.35 acres plus or minus. The subject parcel is currently zoned C4 Planned Commercial District. And now I'll turn this over to our staff.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I got a correction on that leading title page. It should be Highway 51, not Highway 521. So I think you got it correctly, so apologize for that. So now I just put some things in the packet, and we have to like change gears in a major sense. And that's important because normally what you do, you're doing like discretionary review as far as conditional uses, rezonings. We just saw like site plan design review and subdivisions, those types of things. So within the city's scheme, you're basically being appointed to the planning commission. You wear 2 major hats, if you will, at least. One is actually planning commissioners, and the other one would be as Board of Adjustment members. So through the city's code, in a section that's different from the zoning ordinance, excuse me, there's a section that deals with where the planning commission is empowered to do or act as the Board of Adjustment. So in this particular case where we have a setback variance that's before you, in this case 2114, you're acting as the Board of Adjustment. So there's a change there kind of legally and mentally as well. And so I put those things in the packet just so you could were aware of that. A lot of people don't notice that. Perhaps in other jurisdictions I've been, sometimes a city or a county will have two different boards. One will be Board of Adjustment or Board of Zoning Appeals, and then they'll have a planning commission. Other times they'll combine them, and there's various reasons for doing so or not doing so, and there's pluses and minuses to both ways. Like obviously by having one body doing both functions, we have fewer people to find, instead of trying to basically find the personnel for two different groups. So it's like one benefit. So when you're dealing with variances, there's something very specific in the zoning ordinance, and that's under Article 10, in this case, capital letter A, which talks about variances. And so it lists 4 things there. So that's been presented. It's an interesting study in Mississippi that, I've worked in 4 other states besides Mississippi, and when I looked at variances in those other states, the factors are very similar when you look at a variance request. Sometimes there's 4 factors, sometimes it's pinched down to 3, you might see it enumerated as 5, maybe 6. It's usually just 4 or 5 factors. But in all the other 4 cases, I found them in the enabling legislation for those states, meaning that the actual factors that came from the state legislature. I couldn't find evidence of that in Mississippi. I couldn't find that in the enabling legislation for the state of Mississippi as far as planning. So the 4 factors here, which are very traditional in a sense, I've seen them in other places around the country that I've worked, doesn't seem to come from the legislature. I'm not sure where they came from, if it was just kind of standard practice that they brought them from some other place and they arrived in our zoning ordinance as factors when considering or deliberating over a variance request. So I just wanted to add that, just a matter of kind of just frame the whole request and that sort of thing. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful. If you could move to the next slide. Okay, let's see. So number 4 there, I'll read that there. Under no circumstance shall the Planning Commission, basically acting as a Board of Adjustment, grant a variance to allow a use not permissible under the terms of this ordinance in the zone district involved, or any use expressly or by implication prohibited by the terms of this ordinance in said zone district. I read that mainly because sometimes people will come into the office or the department and they'll say, well, I want to change the use of my property. I want to request a variance. But it's been legally well established in the United States or whatever that don't give a variance for a change in land use. If somebody wants to change the land use that's legal on their property, that would either be through a rezoning or conditional use. So that may seem like a very minor thing to just a lay person, but it's actually a very big thing to a planning practitioner from a legal standpoint and the way a lot of the zoning is structured. So moving on, what we have here is we have the subject property highlighted with the blue box. You can see Highway 51 there on the right side of the slide. The subject property has the C4 zoning, and there's C4 zoning to the north, and then to the south and to the west is R10 zoning. So what we've got here is a site plan provided by the applicant, and the applicant is Mr. Gunkert. Harry is in the audience tonight. If he has any things to add or if you have questions for him later. So we see the site plan provided by the applicant. You see the existing building highlighted with the purple. That's the large building there kind of in the center of the property. And then towards the back, they want to with this site plan here is showing kind of like in a gold color, the proposed building that they're wanting to build. And through the zoning, this is a unique feature of the zoning, is that most of the zoning districts, or all the zoning districts in the town that I remember, don't have ability to basically toggle or vary. What I mean by that is it has a set rear yard setback, and that's it. But with the C4 zone, the zoning ordinance does have the ability to change, and that's based upon what either the use or the zoning is next or adjacent to the property. So in this particular case, the zoning ordinance prescribes if the zoning would be commercial, let's say it'd be the like or the same zoning, C4 to the west, and the use would be commercial over there, the setbacks would be, for the rear yard, would be 15 feet. But since it's residential, both in zoning and in use, the setback is 60 feet. And so we see that, I've tried to highlight that, that 60-foot rear yard setback. So that's prescribed by the zoning ordinance because of the residential use and zoning that's west of the subject property. So they also tried to highlight the 30-foot rear yard setback. You see that dashed line there. Daniel's moving his cursor there, so he's trying to help us. So that's very much appreciated. Thank you, Daniel. So basically what they're wanting tonight is basically to vary from the required 60-foot setback down to 30 feet, which would give them enough room then to establish the proposed building. So what we've done here, I've tried to do a few field photos that shows the subject property. This would be the very west end of the subject property, and it's looking north. There's a little road there. It's from Southern Villa Drive, and it's looking north to the subject property. This phenomenon amazes me, because when I do the PowerPoint, I put the slide going the right direction, but somehow when I don't know what happens, it turns it. But I know that when I build it and I did it, it wasn't so everybody has to cranny their neck at a 90-degree angle. But so anyway, this particular slide here is actually at the rear of the property, and it shows the residences to the rear. And there's that tree line there, basically, and the fence line is at the very rear of the property. So, and I think there's one more picture. Good, this one stayed going the right direction. The way it's intended. This is actually from the subject property, and it's looking west. And so with the arrow there, it's showing basically kind of where that dumpster is now. That's where the proposed building would be, and it would kind of stretch along there from the left to the right. And then you can see the trees that were in the other slides that would be back behind it. So what they're desiring to do is build a new 45-foot by 100-foot metal building and still utilize the existing parking lot for their parking needs. Yeah, so this was here basically supplied by the applicant and then Mr. Guckert. So yeah, T4 Investments / Jeff Kuntz, which is the owner of Emergency Equipment Professionals Incorporated, is requesting a property variance at 6441 Highway 51 from the west rear property line. The reason Mr. Kuntz is asking for the variance is to be changed from a 60-foot setback to a 30-foot setback is due to the already existing asphalt parking lot. The request is needed to build a new 45 feet by 100-foot metal building, as I just stated. The adjoining property behind this location will be looking into an already oak tree line and solid sheeted rear wall out of the new building. Due to the heavy traffic in the existing parking lot, the benefits from this variance request will be substantial to the success of the business and greatly appreciated. That's supplied by the owner's agent in this particular case. So what we've tried to do is try to analyze what's been provided through the request and the applicant, and through those letters A, B, C, and D. So letter A here is that special conditions or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, and which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same zoning district. So I didn't really see anything peculiar involved with the property. Maybe if the applicant has something or whatever. One of the things that I had mentioned to the applicant is perhaps there's something about the depth to width ratio of the property that makes it unique. So therefore, that's why they want to put the building back there, where they've only basically, looks like they've got maybe one or two options to go with as far as its location. I don't know if they followed through with that or not, if there was anything abnormal or peculiar about the property based upon the depth to width ratio. Or is it the C4 zoning against the R10 zoning? Going on to letter B, that a literal interpretation of the provisions of this ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district under the terms of this ordinance. Most properties can find room for an adjacent detached building, but this is not universal. Most C4 properties in Horn Lake have solid paving for their parking lots per the code. Actually, it's required per the code that if people are doing a new establishment, we've probably seen from other site plan design reviews that you've done that the parking requirement is of a solid surface, whether it be asphalt or concrete. There is some wording in the zoning ordinance where people were allowed, going back to about 2006, 2007, for if people had previously established gravel parking lots or parking areas in town, that those could be continued, but there was a set of criteria to follow. We actually have a big binder, a big book in our department of these non-conforming either driveways for residential uses in town or commercial establishments. But they've, over the years, a lot of them have went by the wayside. They haven't kept up, they haven't maintained their status as a gravel area. So most of the parking areas in town are actually paved, either with concrete or asphalt. Going on to item C, that special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Again, I didn't really see anything as far as special conditions here. Perhaps, obviously, when you get a group meeting like we have here, there's other perspectives, and maybe people can find things other than that staff can find. So we're completely open to that. So the C4 versus the R10, and then the variability of the rear yard setbacks in the C4 zone, as I mentioned earlier, because that's our only zoning district that has that. All the other zoning districts just have a set rear yard setback with no variability. In this case, it's variable based upon what's adjacent to it. So I don't know if the applicant has anything more to add on these particular factors. And then factor D, that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other land, structures, or buildings in the same district. Obviously, if the other three factors are legitimately met, then this item could be met, thus completing and meeting the four factors. So we just leave it to your guys' thought and what you might have, be able to draw from the applicant if he has any questions or thoughts that he might want to add. That conclude. Sorry.
All right, do we have any questions for staff? Yes, sir.
I do have, because I've been doing some research here the last few days or whatever, I do have some different things if it would be, I don't know if it would be edifying to the people in attendance or the planning commission. I found from in the state of Michigan and the state of North Carolina some case law on, you know, what is deemed hardship, what is deemed unnecessary hardship. I don't know. I've got some definitions. I could read them or whatever or not. But I do have some of that, if that you would find that edifying at all. Because lots of times it just comes down to like, well, what is a hardship? What's not a hardship? What's fair? What's not fair? And it's a question that a lot of boards of adjustments deal with nationwide all the time. So.
Will the applicant come up, state your name and address, and then if you won't have anything to add, we'll go ahead and hear what you'd like to add to the presentation.
I'm Harry Guckert.
Just pull that mic around.
I'm Harry Guckert, owner of Guckert Construction Management. I am located in Batesville, Mississippi. I built the original building for EEP. That's the name of the company for Jeff Koons. I built he is He takes care of emergency equipment. He does ambulance repairs, fire truck repairs, et cetera. And, everything that he does, it's just, his lot is completely full of his own vehicles, the vehicles that he's working on, let's put it that way. Emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, it's packed. We need this setback to happen for his business. And I know we're asking for an extra, 30 feet?
Mm-hmm. All right, does any commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
Between the right-hand side of the building that's there now and the front of the building that you want to build, how many feet is between there?
From the back of the existing building to the front left-hand corner of the building that we're building now, that's the way it would be.
So it's not
Yeah.
being attached
You
to,
see the back right-hand corner.
okay.
You're facing, what highway is this? This is 51 out here in the front. So he's pointing, yeah, that's from there to the front. I think it was like, well, that building was 40 foot deep, so it must be somewhere around 40 feet. Just looking at that right there. Somewhere around 40 feet to the back of the asphalt. And the parking lot is what I'm stating. It's, as you saw in that picture a while ago, there's a garbage dumpster right in that area.
Yeah.
See there? And they use all of that, and that back behind there is a fenced-in area also that's being used for stuff, for storage. So that's why they're wanting to go back behind them. And just join the parking lot, the asphalt parking lot. That's where the front of the new building will be. That's another reason for the setback variance.
Thank you.
Were these pictures sent by your company, what are these pictures Mr. Barr taking?
No, sir, I don't know whether, I guess Mr. Kuntz sent those pictures.
Okay. With that
I
much,
took those pictures. I took them.
He took
Yeah.
them.
okay.
I tried to, hopefully that would be helpful to.
Even if this variance was granted, would that be enough? You say you're talking about fire trucks and, ambulances, and even looking at the parking lot now and doing the picture taking, there's not too much on there. If we were to grant this variance, would that space be enough?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because what they're gonna do with this new space is radio. They're gonna do radio, they're gonna install radios and ambulances, et cetera. They just need the space mainly for storage and a few more offices and some radio equipment, et cetera, over there. It's just gonna be two small overhead doors to go in and out of and a few more offices and storage room over there for their, it's gonna be a different part of the business, really. It's the same business, just something else to do, something, for the radios. They don't have that room in the actual workshop over there. That's actually a mechanic shop, those last several bays there. I think it was 3 or 4 bays where they work on the fire trucks. So we'll still have the same amount of parking.
And Director Barr, I have a question. On in the rest of the city, do we maintain a 60-foot, a 60-foot setback on other areas other commercial areas that butt up to, residential?
Well, that would be the, very good question. That would be the requirement per the zoning. We'd have to go back and analyze it and see if that's actually what they've done historically, as far as how those got developed. If they actually held them to that, or if they let them do something else, we'd have to look at that on a case-by-case basis of those instances where it occurs in town.
Mr. Barr, do you know the reason for having those 60-foot, setbacks?
My guess, obviously, as practitioners, when we see different, or we incur different situations in the office, on a daily basis, we're trying to figure out why they're in the ordinance. And sometimes it seems fairly obvious. Other times, maybe not so much. I call it hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the science of interpretation, or of why things exist, and trying to figure that out. And so, like in this particular case, my guess is is that where we have the normal 15-foot setback in the C4 zone, that's where it's up against other C4s. So they're saying, okay, it looks like the community standard is set at 15 foot. That's the accepted standard for a setback, a commercial up against commercial for a rear yard. So in this case, it looks to me like what they were trying to do is trying to be preemptive in a sense from a protection standpoint, and they set the setback at 60 foot where it was up against, because the wording in the table, the chart in Article 12, in the table of uses, and then also setbacks and heights and all those different things, in the zoning ordinance is 60 foot. When it's up against, when it's commercial, rear yard, up against residential, it just says abuts. It just says abuts residential. So, I mean, even from our standpoint, we don't know if that means if it's like abuts residential use or abuts residential zoning. Now, in this case, it doesn't matter because we have both residential zoning and a residential use as far as those like townhomes that are west of the subject property. So it appears that they were trying to build in a safety net or a safety protection to, if there was going to be use commercially and it was up against residential, that they were going to space it out. They were going to have a higher setback requirement, which that's what the table indicates. So that would be, I guess that would be our guess at it.
So if I'm looking at this map correctly, that means that the tree buffer, we would be taking out some of that tree buffer to, for them to build, you wouldn't take.
Only thing I'm gonna do is maybe shave the little branches off of them. I'm not gonna be so deep. They're right on the line. They're on back a little ways. We're good. I'm just gonna probably have to cut some of the limbs off. Yes, sir. Do some tree trimming, but, I'm gonna be a ways away yet from the roots. I laid it out by hand, the owner and I did, and we're probably from here to the wall from the trees.
And do we have any other questions for staff or for the applicant? All right, so you can have a seat. If we have a question, we call you back up. Well, whenever anybody's ready, if we have a motion. Oh, yeah, it's public opening. We'll open up for public. Anybody, we're opening up to the public. Come on up, Mr. Francis.
My name is Francis J. Miller, 14-year voting resident, Ward 5 of the city of Horn Lake. When that first building was built that this young man said he built and owned, I'm glad I met the builder and owner. I was over there every single day they built that building. I never saw a building so fireproof in my life. Everything in the existing building is metal. There are no 2x4s, no overhead wood. It's all metal. I've never seen a building like that in my life. So that should give you some encouragement with the building they want to put up in the back. It should be the most fireproof building, second most, because the first one is already the most on that same property. So with the fact what he says that the trees won't be bothered, that will help the buffer between the business and those residents. That also helps. But now the building itself, I'm sure he's going to build the same kind of building again, which means you can't set it on fire. Now the houses, if they catch on fire, they're going to set his business on fire. His business will not go on fire. I witnessed that myself. That building that he built is solid metal. Now, you might want to ask him, is he going to use wood or metal in this second building? If he says metal, build that building everywhere in Horn Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Anybody else would like to speak? All right, this public hearing is closed. Do we have any other discussion on the board? Do we have a motion? Yes, Commissioner.
After review of application number 2114 variance, a request for rear yard setback variance from the requested 60 feet setback down to 30 feet, thus resulting in rear yard setback distance of 30 feet at 6441 US Highway 51 North in Horn Lake by T4 Investments LLC, landowner Harry Gulkert, Construction Management LLC applicant, with said property consisting of 2.35 acres plus or minus and is zoned C4, Planning Commission Commercial District by the City of Horn Lake Planning Commission acting as the Board of Adjustment approves the said variance request.
I second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Egner, a second by Commissioner Stokes. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mercer? Yes. Commissioner Egner?
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Ware?
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Right, thank you.
District.
All right, I'm going to turn this over to our staff for other business.
Thank you. I was just collecting my thoughts there. I was wondering where my agenda was. It's like, oh, well, it's on the front of my packet. It's like, okay, yeah. It's on the back of the front page there, or whatever. So I hope you saw that. We're trying very hard to minimize the size of the packets by printing on both pages.
And we much appreciate that, just so you know.
Oh, thank you.
We as commissioners really like being able to do that. It's much better.
Okay, thank you.
Great job, Dr. Barr.
Oh, yeah, well, it's always a kind of a fine line, like, well, you know, how big do we make some of the things, you know, like, because we're trying to go to 2 slides, you know, on per page, or whether it should be 1 page or not, and, you know, it's always a balance trying to find that, where you have what we feel, what you would have sufficient information to make a judgment or make decisions upon, or whether we're just doing too much or not. So, oh yeah, so under here, under 6A, as far as an update on department hirings or personnel changes, the person that replaced our office manager or our planning administration, she started today. Her name is Amy. My brain just went. Oh, Amy Roberts. Yeah, she used to be Amy Marshall, because I guess she has previous history on the planning commission. So that interview that took place like a month ago, actually, or whatever. But she actually started today. So we're very excited about that. She'll be trained by well, now as the rental housing quality coordinator. And so she started today. So we're excited about that. The department did offer the stormwater coordinator position and a code enforcement officer position to a couple of folks for going to a couple of Fridays back, and they're on the agendas. No, I take that back. They've already been. Trying to think. I think it's on the agenda for tomorrow with the alderman. Let me just double check. Yes, it would be Brad Cross as the stormwater coordinator. It's on the agenda for tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's the 20th. And then the other one would be John Bradley as the code enforcement officer, pending, you know, if they pass all their like drug screening and those physicals and those types of things. So if they're approved tomorrow by the alderman, then they would start on January the 3rd. So then we'd be basically the only open position would still be one code enforcement officer. Because we did interview hoping to find 2 candidates. We were basically found one that we were comfortable with, Mr. Bradley. So that's kind of an update on the personnel changes as the department continues to change, almost by a weekly to a monthly type basis. So going on to item B there, comprehensive plan update. Andrew and I, we met electronically with our planning consultant, which is Orion Planning Group. That was that Friday that we did that? Yeah, it was just last Friday. And we met with them and we went over some items. And basically, the two important, I guess, takeaways to kind of put on your calendar would be the concept that we're going to have kind of a planning week coming up probably in February. And then I think it's going to be probably in April. Is that correct? As far as the push, the big planning push week or whatever, is where there would be meetings in the community to try to draw people out, get their input on various planning topics, and for the city staff and people on the advisory, the comprehensive advisory group, to be and the consultant itself to kind of sift through and move forward in a progressive sense. So we thought it was a very positive meeting that we had electronically with the comprehensive plan consultant from Friday. And then the last one, I have on item C here, I have gotten some feedback from some of you folks, and I hope to, if I remember, yeah, it's on my list here to talk to the alderman last night, is the training opportunity. And this would be done by the DeSoto Council, and they would bring in some planning professionals, some law professionals, and so anybody that's, we would encourage, if you could have a chance to attend, there would be probably something held during the day down at the, there's a building near the Landers Center. It'd be during the day. I'm not sure which day of the week would be, probably Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the most logical, probably from about 10 a.m. to about 2 p.m. And they would provide lunch. And they'd have some speakers come in from around the state to speak on the subject. It would be a training opportunity. So I'd encourage that if you get a chance to give us some feedback. We've already heard back from a few of you, and that'd be great. But I'm hoping to pitch that to the aldermen as well tomorrow. And they would bring in some planning professionals, but that would be law professionals. Once we get kind of a number, and so anybody that's we would encourage if you have a chance to attend. There would be probably something held during the day down at the there's a building near the Landers Center. It'd be during the day. I'm not sure which day of the week would be. Probably Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the most logical.
All right, does anybody in the commission have anything? Well, I would just like to say that it's been a pleasure for 2022 to work with all you, and I hope everyone has a great Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I look forward to seeing y'all back here on January 30th so we can continue doing the service for Horn Lake. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
I gladly motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.